good afternoon. A warm welcome to a special live edition of BackChat. For our viewers and listeners at home, we are here at Mulungushi International Conference Center for the very first ever Invest Zambia International Conference. I'm your host, Choolwe Chibomba, and today we are lucky to be joined by an esteemed panel of guests from across mining, energy, finance, and government. And today we're going to discuss how Zambian mining can power the green energy revolution. Now, there's been a lot of talk and building of momentum around the future of Zambian energy. And each of my guests here today is a key player in building that future. So we're going to have insights from each of our panelists here today, and then we're going to have an open discussion before we open up to the floor for the audience to ask a Q&A. But before we begin our conversation, I'm going to ask our guests to introduce themselves, starting with you, Mr. Muyangwa.
Thank you very much. My name is Kakenenwa Muyangwa. I'm the CEO of ZCCMIH PLC.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much. My name is K2 Mapasa. I'm the head of Africa at Appian Capital Advisory.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Johnny Velloza. I'm the CEO of a company called Cobalt, which is building a cobalt refinery here in Zambia.
Good afternoon to our live audience here and to those of you listening to us via various media platforms. My name is Wezi Gondwe. I'm Managing Director at Greenco Power Services Zambia here in Lusaka. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chipokota Mwanawasa. I'm the policy advisor to the President of Zambia, and until recently, I also served as deputy head of the Presidential Delivery Unit for the first 2 years of its inception.
Thank you for those brief introductions, and it's great for you to be here with us, and also thank you to the audience for being here with us. So, Mr. Muyangwa, we all know that copper is the most important of metals' green energy revolution. President HH has set an ambitious target of 3 million tons annual copper production from 2031. How is ZCCM working to reach this goal, and what roadblocks are you currently encountering?
Thank you very much. ZCCM is contributing towards this target through our shareholdings in the mines, both existing and also planned.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, we have sorted out the situations at Mopani, KCM, and we also, in terms of development, we have a shareholding in Muyangwa, which is the next big mine, copper mine out there. So, if you look at the proportion of our shareholdings in all these mines, we believe that by 2031, when that 3 million target is supposed to be attained, we would be accounting for about 10% of that number through our associated companies. And some of them are, like Muyangwa, it's still at a developmental stage. There's still a lot of drilling going on with plans for shaft sinking and start of infrastructure by next year. But by 2030, 2031, they could be producing 300,000 tons of copper. So it's in these ways that we are, we are contributing towards this. We also have large-scale exploration permits, which we are working on, and in due course we'll be reaching out to potential partners to see if they can participate with us on this project. Now, in terms of roadblocks, clearly with the drought that was experienced last year, there was a big impact on the sources of power or availability of power. It's really thanks to ZESCO, government, and also the changes in the regulation of the power sector that the mines actually did very well. And already this year, we are looking at, I think the first quarter results have been something like 224,000 tons of copper produced. So clearly, we do extrapolate that to the end of the year, you can actually see that 1 million ton projection for this year is achievable. So there's a lot of stuff in that way which is going on in the right direction. Another blockage which is there, it's really about the infrastructure. The transport sector. If you look at the route to Kasumbalesa, at one time there were backlogs coming all the way from Kasumbalesa up to close to Kitwe. So the construction of a dual carriageway from Lusaka to the Copper Belt, that's going to assist. And then you have all these plans on Tazara, the Lobito Bay, and potentially also the Western Corridor, which is really Mutanda, Kasempa going to Kaoma, and then finding your way downwards to Namibia. So again, that's going to help out in terms of our transportation. So at least those two blockages, you can actually say that government is doing a lot, and partners or other parties, commercial entities out there are also responding to these, because these are investment opportunities. The opportunities for making money by addressing the concerns that stakeholders, the Zambian people have.
Okay, thank you for those insights. And from an investment perspective and point of view, what makes the Zambian mining sector so attractive, K2, and are critical minerals and green technology? Is the hype real?
So maybe a bit of a background. Appian, we do investments across mining, and we specialize in that sphere globally. Zambia is not a hype. Zambia has been mining for quite a long time. In my own history, when I studied at university, I was taught by some eminent Zambians at university. So this is not a hype, and green minerals is not a hype. However, we have invested in 12 mines since 2016. We've financed and built 12 mines since 2016. So, but none of those were in Zambia, and I'd like to see that picture change, because I do believe Zambia has got the geological potential for us to actually invest in bringing production into Bay.
Okay, thank you for that, Johnny. Is developing Africa's first cobalt refinery in Zambia to supply reliable battery-grade cobalt, and how Zambia's policy environment, investment, climate, and infrastructure made this possible, and what challenges still remain for you?
Yeah, it's a good question. Because a lot of people said to us when we started the company that we were mad and that it would be very difficult to do. The reality is we have to be competitive with the rest of the world, and in the cobalt context, 95% of the world's cobalt is refined in China. So the big challenge for us is how do we become cost competitive with China, because people are not willing to pay a premium for any critical mineral that is refined outside of China. So it's been a challenge for us. But to directly answer your question, when we had the opportunity to start this project, we looked at the 8 countries that the supply chain covers. And it was clear. It was a simple piece of work that said Zambia provides the best economic environment. Exchange control issues are sort of front of mind here. Mining legislation that is not only mature, but is also very similar to what you would get in the top jurisdictions around the world. And a degree of democracy and fairness in the country that is stable. We've all heard the president on more than one occasion say we've had a peaceful transition of power in this country 5 times since independence. And that all plays into it's stable here, it's predictable here. So if you just look at maybe some countries in the northern hemisphere at the moment, it's unstable, it's unpredictable, and you don't know what the future brings. Here, we've got a very good idea of what the future brings. So that's what made it possible here. The challenges that still remain for us are infrastructure related. Again, I'll go back to the comment that we have to be competitive with China. And in order to be competitive with China, we've got to be better than what they are at what we do, because they are a lower cost jurisdiction from a labour perspective and, of course, state subsidies. Our power here is more expensive. Our logistics are more expensive to move stuff. So we've got to resolve the logistics challenge in this country, I think. It's not a prohibitor from doing it, but it is something that we need to resolve, because if we're going to have more companies like us invest in the country, they're going to be looking at issues like this, and we're going to have to resolve them.
Okay, thank you for that. Hi, Wezi. Nice to see you again.
Good to see you too.
Yeah, I think last time we met, it was before the great news that happened a couple of weeks ago. So I'm going to now ask you about your company, Africa Green Co., which helped finance the recent completed Chisamba solar plant, supplying 100 megawatts of renewable energy to FQM's operations and freeing up electricity for domestic use in Zambia. So my question to you is, are these power deals the way forward for Zambian mining?
Thanks, Choolwe. It's a multi-layered question. How much time do we have?
Go for it.
But yes, so I think just for the benefit of those in the audience who may not know what GreenCo is, so very briefly, we are a renewable energy intermediary and trader, credit-worthy intermediary. What we aim to do in the country and indeed the region, is to facilitate and indeed, catalyze and accelerate investment in new, clean energy generation, and indeed even downstream infrastructure, transmission, distribution. But to your question, thanks very much. The transaction that we were involved in, had a number of, parties to it. And what we were dealing with, just from the previous respondent, was how to make such a project, bankable when you've got, an economy that is recovering, albeit with great strides in the last few years, but that is still recovering from, a period of having been in decline, having defaulted on, on our sovereign debt. And really operating under IMF conditionalities and restrictions around contracting debt, and especially where that involves the public sector. So we brought innovative ideas in collaboration with the actual financiers, Stanbic Bank, and an equally innovative anchor off-taker, that was FQM, and also further equally, a developer in Kariba North Bank, subsidiary of ZESCO. That we were able to put a structure together in what was, fairly quick time to make the transaction happen. But I think the important thing about it is it's a repeatable transaction, and the nature of the supply. We are supplying a large mine. The quantum of energy we are supplying represents just a fraction of what they consume. So when you think about how the structuring of that supply works, together with other suppliers to the same mine, it starts then to prefigure or precurse, what the open access potentially could look like, or a leaf that could take from, i.e., co-supply structures, and working with large operators, large mines that can anchor significant transactions behind which you have significant investment to the tune of $100 million on that transaction. That in itself can catalyze the general, acceleration in adding new capacity to the grid. So I think it's very exciting, and we must, I think, use the opportunity to keep the momentum up. That's what this game is about. It can't be just an isolated transaction. There are multiple traders in this market now, and it's repeatable, and we should use that to pick up the momentum to keep driving, because the most important thing we can do when we come back to mining and reaching the 2 million and 300 million tons per annum is to consistently signal to investors, domestic, regional, global, that there is a credible pipeline of new generation coming on stream in Zambia. When they look at investing, they'll look and say, what's the story on regulations? What's the story on energy? What's the story on the general environment? And so if we're not signaling that consistently, that investment is going to be withheld. But with correct signaling and consistency, we'll unlock that investment and pools of capital that can that flow to Zambia. So let me pause there, and we can discuss some more further down. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for those wonderful insights. Hi, Chipo, how are you?
Good, Choolwe.
Yeah, so from a government perspective, how is the government supporting the mining sector? And are we going to see greater value chain addition from refinement to manufacturing in Zambia?
Yes, actually, I think the first thing to say is that government is creating an attractive investment environment in the country, and which ties up everything my previous colleagues have just said. In fact, what Wezi didn't say, and I was waiting for him to say it, is that what enabled that transaction of the Chisamba 1,000 megawatts, or for them to be able to supply power to the mining sector through trading, was because of the policy reforms that the government and the president embarked on. You know, as the old adage goes, that insanity is doing the same things over and over again and expecting things to change. So this government was voted on a platform of change, and the president is the chief reformist in this country. And one of the things that shows this clearly is both the mining and energy sector. So for clear policy reforms were done in the energy sector to support the mining sector, which was anchored on open access, so introducing independent power producers and promoting them, also promoting independent power traders, introducing net metering, as well as introducing the cost-reflective multi-year tariffs, or a blended tariff that would actually incentivize the investors to invest more in energy, because they would get their money back and the power wouldn't be subsidized. So we're working through this over time, and that reform is what has enabled the innovation in the sector to be able to have models that take away demand from the public utility, and there's more demand for the traders to supply from the region, so from the Southern Power Pool into the mining companies as off-takers. And in addition to that, we've seen interconnectors being also implemented. So we have the Tanzania-Zambia interconnector with secured funding from the World Bank and the EU. It's a plus minus $300 million project that will see power connecting Zambia and Tanzania and the rest of East Africa. And we'll be able to get power from that side of the region, but we'll also be able to supply power on that side of the region. We are also working on the Angola-Zambia interconnector and several other interconnectors into the DRC. So Zambia is like the hub, and the main off-takers that we're relying on is the mining sector. You cannot mine without power. Johnny has spoken about the Cobalt refinery that they're building. We want more smelter capacity in the country. To enable that, we need more energy. So government is basically creating an investment friendly and attractive environment, having clear policy direction, clear targets. We've already spoken about the 3 million ton target, and hand-holding transactions. So government is also now in the business. You know, we want to see private sector thrive. So in order to achieve this, the president also created 2 critical tools in the name of the Presidential Delivery Unit and the Public-Private Dialogue Forum, which is like a complaint box. I like to call it the official complaint box for the private sector. You know, so when you have an issue or a challenge, you know, you go to the Presidential Delivery Unit or the Public-Private Dialogue Forum, you present your issue, whether it's legislation or policy reform that is needed, or it's a bottleneck, you know, for permissions, permits, licensing, and we support that work to get mining to thrive, so that together we can achieve that 3 million ton target. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for those insights and that information. So this is going to be for anyone who can pick it up. It's going to be an open discussion. So to you panelists, are we seeing the start of a virtuous circle where Zambian mining generates critical minerals to supply each energy project, green project that powers Zambian mining, or are we still some way off? Anyone can pick it up.
I'll have a go. I think we're quite a long way off.
Okay.
You know, the the critical minerals that we're looking for, the production capability of those minerals is not on the continent. So, you know, if you have a look at in my world with Cobalt, the electric vehicle batteries or the stationary storage batteries that we are targeting, they're not manufactured on the continent.
Mm-hmm.
So our finished product will still go out and it's not going to come back and benefit us here. Even our copper, although I'm not in the copper sector as such, all of our copper is getting exported. We're not adding value to it here to the point where it then gets integrated into power turbines or generators or electrical distribution circuits. We send it out and it comes back.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we've got a long way to go still.
Maybe just to add, I think that conversation, if you really want to get that virtuous cycle, you got to have other people here in the room.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're talking about, you know, electrical vehicles, right? You got to have the OEMs here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the natural, you know, people that needs to be here. So that, you know, it's a challenge for Zambia to start having those conversations with the OEMs. There's a country, Morocco, you know, North Africa. I think it's a good model to look at how they're positioning themselves. They've got a very matured car manufacturing industry looking at Europe. They bring them back into the conversations around how do they beneficiate minerals and create that virtuous cycle that you're talking about as well.
Okay, thank you, K2 and Johnny. Okay, Chipo.
Yes, and this is you can't underestimate the power of communication, because just listening in, it sounds like there's some things happening out there that people might not be aware of. And I think we are on the path to that virtuous cycle. It might be a long way off, but what's clear is that we are on the rails heading there. And I say this because some of you might or might not be aware that we've actually manufactured our first batteries in Chibombo M phase, in the Chibombo M phase. This was just less than a year ago. So we've had, and that's using as much as possible local material. The president, even yesterday when he opened the conference, he spoke about having preferential treatment. So for us, the instruction to government institutions, because you have to lead by example, is that anything that's being manufactured in the country is what you procure first before you procure anything else. So we have to lead by example as one of the biggest institutions in the country with buying power. So the batteries are coming. What else has happened? There's been deliberate policy direction from the president as well, basically telling mining companies that they have to leave enough cathodes and anodes in country for value addition of electric cables. Before, a company like Zamefa in Luansha would actually buy the copper, you know, from outside the country. So it would go out as out of the country exported, and they have to buy it LME price and then bring it for value addition here. So the manufacturing companies in country have first right of refusal of that metal and copper before it goes out. So we are getting there. And what I want to leave with us here is that the most important thing first is to have a vision and a target and a plan, which we have put in place that wasn't there before. So the challenge now is for all of us to work towards that, and not just government, but private sector. Alpine, you're very welcome and happy to have some of these conversations. There are projects out there. There is appetite. We are also talking to our neighboring countries for bigger market beyond the Zambian population. So in this SADC region, there is a population of 300 million people altogether, which is huge. And I want to share a little story, an anecdote, before I pass on the microphone. About 18 months ago, I was having this conversation with a friend. I shouldn't mention his name, but he's a leading business person in this country. And he says, oh, you people keep talking about electric vehicles and electric vehicle batteries. We can't even make toothpicks or cornflakes. I want to challenge us. Trade Kings just launched their first cornflakes a few months ago. And I called him, I said, oh, now we're making cornflakes, so we can make batteries.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. So, based on what you've just said, how can Zambia remain, stay competitive amongst other African nations? And how can we ensure that there's growth in both mining and green energy to benefit local communities in Zambia?
If I may.
Yes, please.
So what you're talking then about is our comparative advantage. How do we compete relative to the region? And that's an absolutely critical question. There's global capital out there looking for destinations. Why should it come to Zambia and not go to Namibia, Botswana, Zimbabwe, South Africa, etc.? So even before we talk about industry, we have to be competitive from a regulatory perspective. We have to be competitive in terms of policy, how progressive it is, how stable it is. As Chipo has mentioned here, we've seen this flurry of initiatives and policies being launched. This is the beginning. Those have to go a long way. When you talk about long-term investments, you're talking about capital coming to reside here for 10 years continuously, 15, 20 years. The first thing that any investor will do is look at where you've been and where we've been the last 10 years. Has it been a predictable trajectory, or have we been, up and down and all over the place, with liable to change and instability? So that's the first thing, is that we need to have our macro framework competitive and stable to attract. When it's so instinctive in individuals, in businesses, to look at opportunities and invest. You don't have to really tell anyone to go and make business. We're always looking for those opportunities. It's innate. It's innate to us and our nature. So that's the first thing. But just going back to where I think practicality. This is the industrialization agenda, that we are that we are talking about. I think we've seen a few countries here and there where, because there's been a discontinuity in long-term provision and availability of key services, electricity, infrastructure, and so on and so forth, where they started to experience deindustrialization. So you get to a point where it can happen the other way around. So we need that. When we talk about beneficiation and going further down the road, even just from raw metal itself, we are landlocked. And we are pushing out a lot of copper in concentrate. We are busy transporting, trucking, shipping, 70% sand, 80% sand in those bags. So from a competitiveness perspective, when we're trading all on one market, the London Metal Exchange, so we will be competing with copper that is being produced, at the seaport, or that can be railed, and we've got huge logistical costs to get our metal to the cost. So even from that perspective, we need to ensure that we can smelt and refine as much of our metal internally first. And then we know that from a competitiveness perspective, margin perspective, that gives us an advantage. And then B, the world has changed. We don't have to reinvent the wheel and walk 100 years of the same history that the old industrialized economies walked. We can have a much shorter learning curve. We need to negotiate smarter with our investors. We need to negotiate smarter from a trade perspective in terms of technology transfer, while at the same time making investments long-term in critical things such as education, and even being able to attract some of these kind of like low-skill industries, things like textiles, for example. Those are being, China has lost its advantage in that space now. Those have moved to the likes of, Bangladesh and Vietnam and whatnot. Why can't Zambia compete in that space? We're exporting a lot of cotton from this country to far places, China and so on and so forth. Why can't we compete there and have the policy to do that? So, the holistic view and being competitive, not just at company or industrial level, but at policy level, regulatory level, we need to ask ourselves, why isn't that investment coming here? And solve for that, and then do more and more of that, and the rest will sort itself out.
Thank you, Wezi. Yes, why can we compete? Yeah, please.
No, thanks very much. I just wanted to say something about, I think you talked about community participation. We have a very good example of this at what everybody knows as Kasenseli gold mine in Mulungushi. Now, what's happened there is that we have pulled in the local community and they have created a trust fund which is now a shareholder in the new operating company that we have set up there. Okay. So they have a 5% free carry as part of the arrangement. So that ensures that some of the benefits coming out will percolate down into the community. It's not only that, but also availability of jobs to the locals, and also opportunities for supplying the operations there. And this can be put out at a national level. I'm not saying that every new mine has to have a free carry of 5% or whatever, but there is something that can be looked at. Just something on beneficiation. I think let's not get too carried away with the idea that we should do everything ourselves. I think regional integration is really important. And if you look at what's happening in other countries, as a good example, Australia and also Chile. Chile exports a lot of concentrates, which has been the foundation of the copper industry for Japan, and currently also China. Okay, in Australia, again, Australia exports a lot of iron ore and coal, which is being bought by the Japanese, the Chinese, to create steel and things like that. Some of that still goes back again. So I think what we need to do is look at where are our strengths. Which specialisms do we have that we can become the champions of in the region, and such that the other players in the other countries in the region can look towards us, to be able to process some of the stuff which is coming out of there. Now, that's going to be a challenge. I think we saw this recently with in the drink sector with DRC, where they said, look, we also want to develop our own drinks business here. So I think our drinks were banned. But really, as part of this regional integration, there's need to have certain countries becoming the champions of certain sectors. So, for example, if Zambia could champion on the copper sector, copper side, the cables, and then I think there was a conversation which I had recently where the manufacturers in South Africa, car manufacturers, could be invited to produce these things. I think they're called looms or so, which where the cable looms, where all the cables, the various parts of the vehicle, could be manufactured in Zambia, and then you export those to the users in South Africa. I think these are the opportunities that we should be looking at in terms of collaboration, so that we take advantage of the benefits of the numbers which Chipo was talking about in the region, not just necessarily just Zambia. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Anyone else? Okay, thank you for that. So Zambia's energy system has come quite under a bit of stress in the past year or so. Are we confident that these shortfalls can be addressed in the long run, and that the mining sector can continue to grow?
I can take that.
Please.
Okay. I think let's just go back to the historical fact. The making of Kariba Dam was to address the power needs of the mines. And before that, if you go around the Copper Belt and even here in Lusaka, you can see these cooling towers. You know, all these towns had coal-powered stations. So, but there was that the fact that there was a market, a ready market, that was the impetus that brought about Kariba. And we are now seeing this again when it's very clear that there's this big shortfall, and that companies are now reacting to this. And ourselves at ZTCMIH, we have invested $50 million into Mamba Energy as part of the phase 2 project, which is going to generate 300 megawatts by June, July next year. That's a $400 million project. And we are also supporting CEC, in which we own about 32% equity. We have also invested in $10 million of their green bond, CEC green bond. So we can actually see these opportunities, the response that's coming through to address the shortcomings in terms of the energy sector, because these are opportunities for businesses to make money. And if you look at the integrated resources, IRP report by the Ministry of Energy, that shows that by 2050, I think the power needs in Zambia could be in the order of 11, 12 gigawatts. Now we are currently at maybe about 3 gigawatts. So that's a lot of power that has to be generated, and it's the opportunities like Greenco has taken up with the Chisamba, and things like that. They have to be a lot more players have to come in and respond to that. So I'm sure that this is going to happen. People are looking at this and say, look, we can make money in this sector, and the incentives are there. The whole system has been deregulated and making it easy for other players to come in. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Just to say, I think I come from the mining field, and there's an expression in South Africa, right? A border market plan, right? So I'm very encouraged by the way Zambia has reacted to the issue around energy shortage. And you can see, allowing private sector mining companies to redefine the plan. We own a mine in Namibia, Roshpina zinc mine. We've recently purchased a solar park linked to the mine. Wow. Some people will think of it as we're trying to bolster our green credentials. But I can tell you now, since that solar park came into operation and is only allowed to supply 30% of our electricity needs, that's the regulation in Namibia, our electricity cost is 20% cheaper. And we've run it for 18 months.
Wow.
So if you're talking to investors, you're talking to business people, you create a problem and you allow people to solve it. Those are the realities. That's what we would like to see. So I'm very encouraged with what's happened in Zambia.
Thanks. And just to add on to that, excuse me, just to add on to that from the sector, I think the response is a resounding yes. The wheels are turning. And Zambia was one of the first movers in the region to start to signal through legislative changes that the market was opening up. We're moving into a liberalized, energy or power sector, and we need to continue to remain the leading light, in the region. There are reforms happening across, all markets: Zambia, Zimbabwe, Namibia, and South Africa in the region, and we. With the launch of the open access framework and the IRP, which for the first time, brings together all the kind of like disparate efforts that were being made, by different, agencies and groups, pulls all of that together into a single integrated document that gives us a roadmap forward, gives us an indication with a proper basis for what future demand growth will look like, what the investment case needs to be across the value chain, generation, distribution, transmission. We've got something real to work with, and the proper implementation of the open access as that is being refined and worked on now, we have the launch, but as the detail and the bolts and nuts are now being put to that, and if that's properly implemented, we have no reason to believe it's not going to be. As members of the ESR, we are part of, providing input as a stakeholder into that. So the future is of growth in the sector is extremely positive. It's never been brighter than it is now, and especially from the perspective of increased private sector, participation. I think sometimes we need to just stop and appreciate that we are seeing projects coming to life in this space in the market today, without, with minimal or zero liabilities, being placed on our, the sovereign treasury, the national treasury, in the form of sovereign guarantees and the like. This is a huge change that I think, perhaps, a lot of people don't appreciate, but to see that in the old days, you could only do this one way. You had to go to the Minister of Finance and get a guarantee to get anything done. That's no longer the case. And we must ensure that we keep that momentum. We don't go back there. That's freeing up resources that are needed in other parts of the economy for the government to look after. So I think we are, in a great place today. If we keep focus and keep driving in this direction, we will see the transformation and the change. Like has been said, we saw a huge project like Kariba being built, on the premise of mine demand that was growing. We're seeing this again, and it's an opportunity we need to make sure that we capture, but not just for the moment, but for the long-term future as well.
Okay, thank you for that. So before I open the questions for the audience to participate in the Q&A, I've got one final question for you. What role do innovation and entrepreneurship play in powering the green energy revolution, and how are the government and businesses supporting this?
Very quickly, innovation is key because there's again a virtuous cycle going on here. The technology that is going to facilitate clean technology or clean energy, or indeed even what was seen as not so clean energy in the past, but can be made much cleaner today, is key. So when you talk about batteries, from a sustainability perspective, and even from an operational perspective, we are accustomed to thinking of all of us being as either independent power producers or as traders, being hosts to the national utility, and all of us looking to them and leaning on them for services. But actually, as the picture changes, as we liberalize, and these are not new things we're doing here. In mature markets, you see these things are already quite established, but we will see a picture where even the private sector, independent power producers and traders, start to provide services back to the national utility in terms of supporting grid stability, helping with capacity reserves, frequency support, and all of that. That's a market that's already starting to develop here, but that's possible only because the technology has gotten to a level where it's technically viable and also commercially feasible, viable to invest in it and keep your investment whole. And then around the structuring, the thinking or the mindset's changing, even from a financing perspective. What financiers have been used, to financing, traditional project type, or project structuring and all of that. That also is going through a change now. For new types of risk allocation to be accepted, a big, one of the activities that we've invested a lot of time into is engaging with financiers to say, we've been used to doing things a certain way, but you can look at risk in a different way. And specifically, if I may, from the Green Corp perspective, the way we view the future of the Southern African power pool going forward as an alternative market to de-risk, offtake, default and default risk in the various markets. So that mindset shift takes a while to happen. You start off with, small projects, and you build confidence on there, from financiers, investors, etc., and ultimately to the utilities that we are working with, with government coming in, to further facilitate that innovation and progressive regulation that unshackles, investment and innovation.
Okay, thank you for that. Please.
I actually wanted to take Wezi's words and adopt them as my own, but just to add on to that about what government is doing and why innovation is so critical. So, couple of things we might wish to highlight on government's part is that this new administration introduced two ministries: the Ministry of Small and Medium Enterprises, which was not there before, and the Ministry of Science and Technology, which are both very new on the scene. And those were deliberately put in place to support entrepreneurs and to facilitate for innovation and high quality technology, to improve service delivery both on the public side and on the private side. And we can't run away from the importance of innovation, and what has to support that, government is facilitating for blended finance through new funding instruments beyond CEC. We've seen in this week alone, the GIP, the Growth Investment Partnership, was launched, another platform to access financing. Pension funds are also getting involved in private sector investments. We've seen NAPSA investing a lot more in some of these projects that entrepreneurs are embarking on. So there's a lot of support there. The president is also leading and pushing and shoving the banks to reduce the interest rates. So lending is slightly softer on the entrepreneurs to actualize their projects. So there's a lot of support out there. But I thought just to end is also to share a damning statistic that a friend of mine shared with me a week or so ago about the requirement of energy. So it's not just for the mining sector, which are the big and main off-takers, but that for every 1 million people, you need 1,000 megawatts of power. So if that is the demand with a growing population on the continent, in the region, in the country, we have to work extremely hard. We have to be very aggressive. We have to be very innovative, especially in how we model the financing around these projects, and work very hard to actualize this, because the demand is there and it's growing even bigger.
Okay, thank you for those wonderful insights and responses and so far in our conversation. I'd like to open the floor now to the audience. If you've got any questions for this live session and Q&A.
It's a comment, and I think maybe Chipo is best placed to make a comment on this. We have, first of all, you can't have innovation with over-regulation. We have a culture of over-regulation. Very recently, I think one of our ministers was talking about regulating SMEs. You cannot have SME and regulation in the same sentence. It just doesn't work. That's number one. Number two, I think that our policy has been very focused on industrial activity. So for example, we have MPhAs. What is our equivalent on MPhAs on R&D and innovation? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that comment / question. I'll start with the overregulation. I think I did indicate earlier that this is something that we're working hard on, and made reference to the creation of the Public-Private Dialogue Forum. There is no one best placed to give feedback on reform or overregulation than someone from the private sector. You assume that the government people actually know the difficulty or what you are going through, especially for us as a new administration. So we rely on you to give this feedback and through that channel. And we've seen a lot of policy and legislation reforms through the PPDF that actually make it into the budget as well. So that's why that platform is there. And maybe not everything will change overnight, but there is that platform, and I'd like to encourage to utilize it effectively. The second part, I think you raised a valid point about the M phase and being focused on industrialization, that we need to do a lot more on research, development, and innovation. Again, the creation of the Ministry of Science and Technology was not by accident. They are coming from behind. They raised an equivalent of Timbuktu, what you see in Rwanda, that was recently opened in Kitwe. Again, maybe we need to communicate a bit more, but it's small but coming up, but we need to do more. Notwithstanding that, nothing stops us from actually creating that hub in the M phase. Like, forget what the name actually says, but you could just get the incentives by setting up those platforms in the M phase. But I hear you, and I take that feedback to be worked on. I also wanted to quickly highlight on the issue, because it's come up twice now, about the export of concentrate. So if you follow me very carefully, the export of copper concentrate in this country is actually prohibited. Okay, that's the first thing to highlight. You're actually not allowed to export concentrate. There is currently an SI giving a waiver, okay, for the export of this concentrate, and it's got restrictions, and it's only because our two biggest smelters in the country are currently down. That's both for Mopani and KCM. And so that waiver, instead of allowing for the concentrate to just keep piling up, it's been given. You literally have to apply to the Minister of Mines. And what we've done also to retain more value for the country is to create a commodity trading company through IDC, so that we extract more value. Even as you export, you're only being allowed to export that concentrate through a government commodity trading company. And that waiver actually says that immediately the smelters are back on, it's revoked. You have to actually value add in the country, so at least to cathode and anode level, but we could do more, create more refineries, etc. But I wanted to just highlight that because it keeps coming up. We also have one on manganese. I think Dr. Sixtus Mulenga is aware, and that's because we don't yet have, a manganese smelter capacity enough in the country. Also, it's got a time frame, and there's this CMIH CEO also highlighted the fact that we might want to look at our competitive advantage, but all these things are actually quite restrictive. You actually get more value and corporate tax with more value addition on our metal, so we're aware of that.
I love the composition of the panel, by the way. The mix is excellent. Coming from the private sector, the Chamber of Commerce, both the National Chamber and the Regional Pan-African Chamber. My question, I think a number of panelists may contribute to it. Our national utility company, ZESCO, in participating in the issue of the green energy revolution and all that, has done a lot to improve its credibility, its worthiness, but whenever IPPs or parties interested in power generation want to sell their models, and ZESCO is the off-taker, we've left the international market to rip us apart and just throw ZESCO's credibility off the rails. Government has done a lot to address and fix the challenges within ZESCO. And ZESCO is working with many parties. It's working with power trading companies and all that. What can we do? What are we not doing to work as a team and improve ZESCO's creditworthiness? PPAs are signed, they are torn apart on the international fora, and we ourselves are not rallying around correcting that narrative about our national utility company. So I thought we need to, if we are going to speak about the green revolution, ZESCO is part of it. It's our national utility firm. And it needs, yes, it needs a credit rating, it needs so many things. But we are not drumming what ZESCO has done to fix affects its creditworthiness. I yield.
I feel very much on the spot here, but if my boss was here, the president, he would have told you we're very proud of ZESCO. And we're very happy with the, we're proud of it as our public utility and providing a lot of support to get it out of the doldrums that it's been in. And it's, I think, again, I go back to the fact that maybe we're not communicating enough of what's happening there. So the debt that ZESCO has been in has been undergoing a restructure, and it's going to take a long time, but we haven't given up on ZESCO. We are also being innovative about how we support ZESCO, hence, all the reforms to support, which you've spoken about, to support less pressure on it and having independent power producers and traders. However, we also have an innovative model that's in the pipeline. You may have even seen an RFP advertised from ZESCO asking for expertise in the last couple of months, which is supposed to create a special purpose vehicle that would basically have an escrow to hold funds, for business to continue going to ZESCO as an off-taker. But there's a guarantee that the entities that are doing business with ZESCO will be paid through that, the design of that special purpose vehicle. So there's an RFP that went out with ZESCO, I think, asking for, and it's getting support from the World Bank as well. They've helped us design this. So we have the theory, but to now actually get it practically implemented, they have advertised to get a firm, which includes different legal, accounting people to help actually design that vehicle. So we haven't given up on ZESCO, and there's a lot of innovation trying to get it out of where it is. We're also channeling business as the independent power producers are supplying mining companies. We're also trying to channel more business from mining entities, not only in the country, but in the region as well. So just to give that comfort. I don't know if you want to add on, Wezi. And
Thank you. I feel obliged because what we do as Greenco, our ability to operate would be absolutely impossible without ZESCO. We are very sympathetic to the recent history and the challenges that ZESCO has been through. So again, when you go through sovereign defaults, with kind of like ZESCO in the center of that, with COVID happening, and then you have a drought. For a long time there was talk of the Vision 2030, diversification of generation mix and whatnot. For many reasons that didn't happen, we were left exposed. So I think they've been through a very bad patch. But as an example of one thing, and I completely agree with you, Jerome, as an example of one thing that perhaps we haven't drummed about enough is, right at the beginning of when the new administration came in, ZESCO's, debt or arrears to, IPPs and suppliers stood at $1.4 billion. And with the work that went into the restructure and all of that, we're sitting at, a few $100 million today, over a period of 2.5 years. You have to clean out all of that, before you can talk about growth, before you can talk about repositioning yourself for growth and contracting further. And how you contract further, obviously, you can't repeat the mistakes of the past and all of that. You need to change all of that. There's a new dynamic now in the market. But everything we do, is contingent on there being that utility, and we need a healthy utility for any of us and all of us to survive. As I say, the work that we do represents kind of like a new class of customer to ZESCO now. Further monetizing, their transmission assets, for example, and open access is going to further accelerate this, where we will not start paying more and more for use of their systems and their network, etc., etc. So, I completely agree with your sentiment. We need to be more aware of, first of all, the context of the history and where we are, how things have moved. I think it's a huge success that's not being talked about enough in terms of the financial turnaround that's going on, and then the future. One final point is, we've got a bit of a history in this country of wanting, a well-oiled utility running well and whatnot, and wanting the lowest possible tariff at the same time. And we have to, accept, the fact that if you're going to have more investment, even if it's the private sector doing it, but at the end of the day, you will rely, or you will have to have new investment in the systems and the transmission and all of that. That entails cost, and that cost needs to ultimately be consumed by absorbed by consumers, industrial, residential, etc., and not have it subsidized or pushed somewhere where it rears its head, somewhere later on as it becomes an unsustainable obligation or burden to bear. So again, we talked about for a long time tariffs. It's great to see like a multi-year, the 5-year tariff migration path finally implemented. Yes, there are challenges because you do have exchange rate issues going on there that, if those are not managed, they erode those gains that you make. But at least from a regulatory perspective, that signaling is important, that we should and must move to costs for electricity and energy that are reflective, the prices we pay that are reflective of investing and running the system. Thank you.
Thanks. In West Africa, there is a saying that although the river provides us with fish and water, it's famous for its crocodiles. And I think that's the issue here of, the history, particularly with ZESCO, the recent history. As Wes has talked about, the arrears, the fact that some of the IPPs were not being paid what was due to them. And remember, these IPPs were funded by international banks and the DFIs. Okay, so the unbundling of those arrears, the effects are beginning to be felt. So, for example, the Mamba Phase 2 at Mamba Energy could not have happened if that commitment from ZESCO to dismantle arrears was not there, and also making sure that current arisings were being cleared. And that's the fact now. That's what's happening. And so it takes a bit of time to get the reputation of old to disappear. But those who know, people who know what ZESCO has been doing, are very excited to do business with them. And gradually, traction is going to be felt in terms of the perception of ZESCO in the international markets. I'm sure that's going to happen. So I think we just need to prove our case, not more talking, but just proving, making sure that we pay the tariffs and keep to our word. That's the only way of doing it. Thank you.
So grateful, and it's really exciting that the government has extended an olive branch to the artisanal miners. Yeah, but then I want to find out from Mr. Is it Valencia? Okay, if you are going to accommodate the artisanals to be supplying cobalt or any other minerals like lithium and manganese, and so that they can also benefit from the industry.
Yeah, that's an important question, and thanks for it. It is such a topical issue at the moment with how we have a responsible sourcing mechanism for cobalt in particular, and the same goes for lithium and any other mineral. But I can talk with authority about cobalt because I've been very involved with the artisanal sector, especially in the DRC. And the big issue here is, are we responsibly sourcing from the artisanal sector? So you definitely do have a dichotomy in the artisanal sector. The first one is, are we abusing the people who are artisanally mining? And that's just a blunt comment. We see circumstances in the DRC where the artisanal miners are cheated in terms of quality, in terms of weight, and they get maybe 50 cents in the dollar for what they're actually mining. That is stealing from the most vulnerable in the world, and that is not acceptable to us. And we will not buy that cobalt because it's, in our view, it doesn't meet the threshold of responsibly sourced. The converse to that is the formalized artisanal sector where people are paid, they work in controlled environments, they're not putting their lives at risk. We don't have child labor, we don't have indentured labor, we don't have pregnant ladies working in the industrial environment. Now, if there's that sector available, we will absolutely, yes, be buying from the artisanal sector, because we have to realize that the artisanal sector in the region is going to be with us for a long time. Now, we've got to stop illegal mining, but artisanal mining that is legally done and formalized, I think, will be with us for a very long time. If we look in the DRC, again, I can speak there with a little bit more authority. We've got 250,000 people informally employed in the artisanal mining sector because they've got no other opportunity of making a living. And until such time as they have another opportunity to make a living, whether it's in the manufacturing sector or the sector support the mining industry or in the agricultural sector, they're going to be artisanally mining. While there's a demand for minerals, they're going to be artisanally mining. And we've got to find a way to formalize it, make their lives better, and make it a responsible activity. So to answer your question, very simply, we will definitely consider it, yes.
Can I just add my voice to that, and to just maybe build on to what Johnny has said? So government direction, or the presidential directive on this, is that we actually need to formalize the artisanal sector. And that's why the Mines and Minerals Commission Act and having mining commissions in each province is currently being deployed to basically support the artisanal miners to formalize. So the president, you hear him speak about 4 things now as policy direction. So we want safe mining, legal mining, formal trading, and security. So once you tick all those boxes, then you'll be able to be acceptable to supply an entity like Johnny's there. There's also others who are pulling together artisanal miners, the likes of, I forget their names now. It will come back to me, but basically those commission centers are supposed to give you the support of HSC, so Health, Safety and Environment. I used to work in the mine, so excuse my acronyms. So HSC, also geological support, metallurgy support, to basically formalize, but you can still remain as an artisanal mining, but we'll be able to buy that metal from you. It goes with the gold sector as well. Otherwise, then the central bank and other buyers of gold won't be able to buy that metal. So I hope that helps also answer the question.
And my question is actually directed to the CEO ZCCMH. Just like Chipo alluded to, we realize that power is important and mining depends also on power. Even today, if we are to meet the deficit of our power as a nation, as long as we make a decision that we should be able to grow this economy as a nation, we will still need power. For example, as a company, we are developing another generating power units, which are called gravitational power generation. We believe that they'll stand the test of time because they don't need water, they do not need sun. With that in mind, we are a young investment in Zambia. My question to you, sir, is do you have a specific policy that helps the young investments to grow in the area of power? I know you have funded so much Mamba Corrales as well as CEC. Are you not looking at also trying to tap the young investments that are investing in that area, so that you can even own some of these stations to the point where they just supply you? I realize that what is being produced at Chisamba, most of it will actually go to First Quantum. But this, it tells us that mining industries, companies, they need power. So is there any policy that really you can be able to help these young investors in the area of energy so that they can also grow up? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. There's no specific policy. What our policy, our medium-term strategy is to invest in the mining and the energy sectors. So if you have a brilliant idea in the energy sector, you should come to our offices, talk to us about what you're doing, and we'll look at the idea, how it works, how the money is going to be made, and we'll consider it. There's nothing like an idea, tossing the idea just because of the source. But what we need to do is to make sure that this is an idea that works. As you know, in the energy sector, there have been, a lot of ideas out there. Some have failed, some have done very well. But I think, as Mr. Mawire, had said, that IP is very important. So if you are sitting on a genuine new idea in terms of ways of generating power, that's your IP. We would like to hear about it. Maybe you are sitting on a gold mine, so we'd like to hear more about it. Thank you.
Firstly, I'd like to thank the panel for their very innovative and interesting conversation, dialogue this afternoon. Thank you very much. I have a number of questions, actually, but time permitting, the first one really relates to power. And I think that something that may have been overlooked in Zambia is the potential geothermal energy. If you take Kenya as an example, Kenya is very favourably placed geologically for heat energy and is doing very well in that area in terms of base load power, providing I think something like 60% of Kenya's power demand now. Zambia doesn't have such favourable geology, but it does have a number of sites that would produce substantial geothermal energy. And I don't know how much people know about geothermal, but it's base load energy, green energy, which is pretty much forever once it's established. And we believe that some of these sites around Zambia would produce potentially between 5 and 20 megawatts per well. But the problem is risk. In looking for geothermal, somebody needs to finance that risky point where you may drill a well and you may get insufficient heat, and that's where the challenge lies. But we do believe if there was a way of financing, perhaps through test wells, geothermal energy, there's a very substantial opportunity there to produce green energy for Zambia. It may not be 100 megawatts, but it would add up to a very substantial amount of energy. And as you know, compared to solar, which is not base load, solar's fantastic, of course, but you need substantial battery power to make it a 24-hour reliable power source, whereas geothermal is, 24/7 once it's established. But as I said, the problem is financing that first stage. So thank you for that. If you could, someone on the panel would care to respond?
Maybe just a brief one from my side. I've heard of opportunities like that in Namwala, Lokinva, and I think it's something that we really need to look at. But I just don't have enough data on this to say much for.
So I'm actually going to speak to that project. So we have Kalahari Geothermal in Lokinva. They have actually produced like bankable solid. They have test piloted 2 megawatts of geothermal power. But like you say, once you switch it on, you can't switch it off. And I think they started this project before we did the reforms. So it's a question of they needed to secure also the offtake of it and be able to plug it into the grid and also secure the financing. So there is that opportunity. And I think we just need to provide more support for them to now be able to expand and move. But they had started before we embarked on the policy reforms, and they were not sure if they would secure a bankable off-taker who would actually pay them. But you can look up Kalahari Geothermal. So that's in Namwala, yes, in Lochinvar National Park. And yes, we're also dealing with the environmental issues because it's been found in a national park.
Question to two levels. The first one, perhaps to Madame, there seems to be a gap between everything you're doing as a government, you're present in terms of policies, and the understanding of the marketplace or the way the marketplace can connect to all your initiatives. So beyond this initiative you have taken, what is your strategy in the coming month to make sure that everything you do is cascade to the day-to-day operators so they can have hopes, but as well as to the foreign market? Because when you're in London, in Paris, in Belgium, what is happening in Zambia and why to come to invest in Zambia is largely unknown by the majority of people. So what is your strategy? The second one, I don't know who can answer. I'm highly interested in human capital and in the African diaspora. And from London, there are fantastic people, engineer, technician, even if you go to United States, incredible people. So what is again your strategy to tap in the human capital of knowledge you have, which could help you solve the different issues your country is facing? Thank you.
Thank you. I think naturally I'll lead on that and open to comments. So the first thing is to admit that we do have a communication weakness, and this has been acknowledged, and this is just not communicating internationally, but also in country, and we talk about cascading. But before I speak about communicating broadly, I want to tackle how we are cascading implementation or work being done. I had made reference earlier, I think you might have not joined, about the president establishing a presidential delivery unit and the public-private dialogue forum. So the day-to-day job of these units, which have people whose everyday job when they wake up and go to sleep, even in their dreams, the instruction is that they should work, dream, sleep, walk the presidential priorities to make sure that we achieve actualization. So we have set out what those key priority areas are, and we cascade within the government institutions, but also engage the relevant private sector, civil society, and stakeholders. It's a very new tool, but notwithstanding the fact that I did say that we have to admit that we have a communication challenge, and this is something that is currently being worked on, but we're also open to ideas and suggestions, not only for in-country, but also for, beyond the region, the continent, and abroad. On the human capital side, we've seen a lot of retention, deliberate retention, both in the private sector and in government, of technical expertise in the diaspora. My colleague, I wish she was here because initially she was supposed to be on the panel. She's leading Mingomba mine, Cobalt. She'll proudly share with you, she's pulled out Zambians from out of Saudi Arabia, Zambians from out of the UK, from the US, technical, bringing them back to work here. And that's a private sector entity in which we have shareholding. So there's a deliberateness. We've also been given instructions to look for those expertise, and sometimes that's why it looks like we're taking long to make decisions or appointments, but it's because we're searching very hard to retain some of those people. And sometimes it's not always attractive in terms of what you actually get paid or remunerated. But there are people out there who are willing to commit their time and serve the country, either both in the public and private sector. But we're also relying on the embassies, like the High Commissioner that you mentioned. So we've seen a few people come back. I see a colleague of mine who just moved back from Australia in the audience as well, just sat behind you. So we are hoping that we'll see a few more people coming back home.
So I'd like to just make two comments. The first one is that I met Chipo through the Presidential Delivery Unit, and our project's getting an enormous amount of support, assistance, guidance from that unit. So from my perspective, it's definitely working. But I really want to respond on the human capital issue. I've been in the mining industry for 35 odd years now, and I've worked around the world. I've seen Zambian engineers in mines in South America. I've worked with them in the iron ore division of BHP Billiton in Western Australia. And we've got some great, great people. So part of our decision to come and build our business in Zambia was because the human capital is here. We've got we aren't in construction yet, but we've got a list of Zambian nationals that we are targeting that through our network and experience to bring home and to employ locally. The skills are here. And I get really annoyed when people say, well, what do you do about skills? We've been mining in this country since 1908. We've had hydrometallurgical processing plants, smelters since 1932. We've got skills in this country. We've got a lot of good skills in this country.
I think a little bit of background here is necessary. You know, soon after independence, the professional classes were dominated by the colonial, people. And the pay structure was such that they were very well paid, but the local people were not. And the local people were also getting educated. Some of them were going abroad, but you would come back in Zambia and you find that you're working as an engineer, but you're being paid a 10th of your classmate who is foreign, but is also working here. Okay, so there was a move, particularly in the 80s and 90s, for Zambians who were well qualified and experienced to go abroad, because they were getting same pay as everybody else. That is slowly changing, or is changing, such that we are now seeing Zambians with the international experience and background, as Chipo has mentioned. I mean, Mingomba, Cobalt, who are running Mingomba, they've done a great job in terms of attracting back, the skills from the diaspora, and this is happening everywhere, so that people are looking in and saying, look, I can still make a decent life out and back home in Zambia among my people. And that's now happening, where the pay structures are becoming competitive enough to attract people from outside to come back. So it's a slow job, but it's happening. There is a cost to skill and experience, and everybody is beginning to realize that people can't just live on patriotism. Thank you.
It looks like you made sure I'm the last person to speak. I don't know whether it was deliberate. I'm the father of mining here, for those who don't know. So the skills, we have them. Zambia has trained people all over the world. People came to Zambia to learn mining. So that issue, my brother, you are raising is a non-issue. The skills are here, like John has testified. But the reason I got a mic was to share. We're talking about energy build-up, energy development and all that. And given the good policies that government has put in place and the system in which we are operating, I think it's very important that we don't overlook one of the key fundamentals. And that fundamental is we must take stock of what we have. These critical minerals we are talking about, we should produce a database which says we got so much copper, resource, reserve, inferred, follow the international categorization. Manganese, we have this. Lithium, we have this, and so on. Such that we can make a long-term national plan to say we are going into the global market, we are going to be competitive, and we'll be there for 100 years, or we'll be there for 50 years, but we need to do so much work to create more. So as a geologist, I discovered discovered the biggest manganese deposit in this country. So it has to start on that. We are sort of silent over it. We're just talking about, yes, green economy, green economy. But what is this green economy based on? If you go to China, you go to America, you go to Europe, they will tell you what resource they have. Strategic reserve, they publish. The Americans are good at it through the USGS. They publish. That's the wealth of Zambia. And we must invest in it and do it. And the good news is that there's a lot of work going on. There's airborne survey going on. Government has put that in place. But the people who walk the talk, the foot soldiers like ourselves, must have those numbers so that we have a national record. That's the comment I wanted to share. So as we talk about this energy, let's also talk about the inventory. What inventory do we have? Thank you very much.
I think it was appropriate for Dr. Sixtus Mulenga to close us off. And I know it wasn't a question, but I would also just like to highlight that when we were actually developing the TORs for the airborne survey, we consulted widely the private sector, we consulted academia as well. And Dr. Mulenga was actually one of those people we got from the private sector to help create those TORs, and they did it not even at a fee. And we burnt the midnight oil, to make sure that we had the right terms of reference to go into the RFP, etc. And so we are getting there, Dr. Mulenga, to build that inventory, that database that will eventually, now that we're starting to see the data coming out of a project, an airborne project for mapping that hasn't been done since the 1970s. That's costing over $100 million that the government itself has decided to invest in. I think it shows the seriousness that the government is put on the mining sector. And once that database is there, we'll be able to also do those assimilations and analysis of whether we are here or will be in play for 50 years or another 100 years. And it also puts it also creates, easier landing space for the investors because they know what they're looking at. You reduce the exploration time, etc. You would speak to it better as an expert. But just to buttress that point, that we didn't actually talk about this big project that government has embarked on to map the country, and the data has just started coming in, so it will be packaged soon and made accessible to the public.
Thank you for that, Chipo, and I do agree with you. I don't know if there are any further comments. And yes, that's all we have time for today. And this has been BackChat. Please check us out on YouTube and Spotify. Look at our website, Zambia is Back. And thank you to the audience for participating. And look at this powerhouse of panelists, Chipo, Wezi, Johnny, K2, and Mr. Muyangwa. Thank you for your time. Thank you for coming on to BackChat. I've been your host, Choolwe Chibomba. Thank you very much.